I spent 2 years renovating my in-laws' beach house for free. The day it was finished, they handed the keys to my wife's cousin. He'll make better use of it. My wife just nodded. You don't even like water, she said. I drove away that night with sawdust still in my hair and a copy of the contract they'd forgotten they signed. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Holy shit, Reddit. I can't believe I'm actually posting this, but I need to get this off my chest. And honestly, some of you might get a kick out of how this all played out. This is a long one, so grab some popcorn because this story has everything. Family betrayal, legal warfare, and revenge so sweet it gave me diabetes. A lot of people have been asking for updates since my last post got some attention. So here's the complete story from start to finish. Names changed, obviously, but everything else is 100% real. I, 38 male, have been doing HVAC work around Charlotte, North Carolina for about 12 years now. For those who don't know, HVAC is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Basically, I'm the guy you call when your AC dies in the middle of July or your heat goes out in January. Started as an apprentice right out of high school when my dad got me connected with his buddy's company. Worked my ass off learning the trade, got all my certifications, and eventually started my own small business around 2018. Nothing fancy, just me and usually one helper, but we stay busy year-round. Charlotte's hot as hell in summer and surprisingly cold in winter, so there's always work. I make decent money. Not rich, but comfortable. Own my own house, reliable truck, no debt except the mortgage. I'm not gonna lie, the work is hard. Crawling through attics in 120-degree heat, working in basements full of spiders, dealing with customers who think their 20-year-old unit should last forever. But I'm good at what I do. I show up on time, I don't rip people off, and word gets around. Most of my business comes from referrals now. I met Sarah in 2019 at this little diner near my house. She was working as a dental assistant, seemed sweet, laughed at my terrible jokes. Pretty girl, blonde, always dressed nice. Looking back, I should have noticed how she never had money when we went out, or how her eyes would light up whenever I mentioned buying new equipment for the business. But you know how it is when you think you're falling in love, you ignore the red flags. We dated for about 2 years before getting married in 2021. Small ceremony, nothing crazy, but she definitely pushed for upgrades on everything. Better venue, fancier flowers, upgraded catering. Every time I suggested something cheaper, she'd get this pouty look and talk about how this is our special day and we'll regret cutting corners. Should have been warning sign number 1. Her family seemed okay at first meeting. Her dad Rick used to work in car sales before he retired early, on some kind of workers' comp settlement from a back injury. Never got the full story on that, but he was always talking about his settlement money, like it made him rich. Her mom Linda never worked, just spent her days shopping and complaining about everything. The weather, the neighbors, the government, you name it. But the real piece of work was Sarah's younger brother Jake. This guy was 26 years old, living in his parents' basement, working part-time at a vape shop, and acting like he was God's gift to humanity. Always showing up at our place uninvited, eating our food, using our Wi-Fi, leaving messes everywhere. When I'd get annoyed, Sarah would just giggle and say, "That's just Jake being Jake," while I fantasized about throwing him through a window. The red flags started early in our marriage, but I ignored them like an idiot. Sarah would make comments about how we needed a bigger house, how we should get a newer truck, how we deserved nicer vacations. Problem was, there was no we paying for any of it. Just me working 50-plus hours a week while she spent money on clothes, makeup, and lunch dates with her girlfriends. She had this way of making me feel guilty too. If I questioned any spending, she'd get all hurt and say stuff like, "I thought we were a team," or "Don't you want me to be happy?" I was working my tail off trying to build our future while she was planning how to spend money we didn't have. About 2 years ago, Sarah came home from her parents' house all excited about some amazing opportunity. Her parents had this old beach house down in Myrtle Beach that belonged to Linda's dad originally. Built sometime in the 80s, hadn't been properly maintained in years. I'd been there exactly once, early in our marriage, and the place was a complete dump. Peeling paint everywhere, rotting deck that felt unsafe to walk on, air conditioning unit that sounded like a dying elephant, and sand fleas that ate you alive the minute you stepped outside. The whole place smelled like mildew and regret, but Sarah had this whole vision. Baby, we could fix it up. Make it absolutely gorgeous. Think about it. Our own beach house. We could use it for vacations or rent it out and make passive income. This could be our ticket to financial freedom. She was practically bouncing up and down talking about it. Drew up all these plans on napkins, showed me Pinterest boards she'd made, talked about hosting family gatherings and romantic getaways. The whole 9 yards. Here's the thing though. Rick and Linda weren't doing anything with the house. Rick's knees were shot from his old job allegedly, and he couldn't handle the maintenance. Linda complained constantly about how the place was such a burden, but they couldn't bear to sell it because it was family heritage and had sentimental value. Classic case of wanting to have their cake and eat it too. Sarah kept pushing the idea harder and harder. You're so incredibly talented with your hands, babe. You could transform that place into something amazing. Mom and Dad would be so grateful, and we'd have this beautiful property that could set us up for life. She painted this picture of us sipping coffee on a gorgeous deck, watching the sunrise over the ocean, maybe starting a little vacation rental business on the side. Made it sound like our path to early retirement. When I asked what Rick and Linda actually thought about us basically taking over their property, Sarah waved me off like it was no big deal. They're totally on board. Dad even said he wishes he had your skills to fix the place up properly. They know they can't handle it anymore. I should have talked to them directly, but Sarah made it sound like everything was already decided. Plus, I'd been working my ass off for years with not much to show for it besides a steady paycheck. The idea of having a beach house, even if I wasn't much of a beach person, did sound pretty appealing. But here's the thing. I've seen too many families completely destroy themselves over property and money. My own uncle and his brother didn't speak for 15 years over their mom's house when she died. Cousins who used to be best friends now won't even look at each other. I've heard horror stories from customers about family businesses going to hell, siblings suing each other, parents cutting kids out of wills. So I told Sarah straight up, if I'm going to put my time and money into this place, I need something in writing. A contract. You should have seen Sarah's face when I said the word contract. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might fall out of her head. Seriously, Chris. A contract? They're my parents. We're family. God, you're so paranoid sometimes. But I wouldn't budge. I'd seen too much drama over handshake deals and family agreements. Money changes people, and property makes it even worse. Look, I told her, if this is such a sure thing, then they won't mind putting it in writing. It protects everyone. After a lot of back and forth, some tears, and her calling me impossible, she finally agreed to ask them about it. Getting Rick and Linda to sign actual paperwork was like pulling teeth from an angry rattlesnake. When Sarah brought up the contract idea, Linda got all huffy about how formal and cold I was being. Rick kept muttering about lawyers and complications and how a man's word should be enough. But I held firm. Too much was at stake to rely on promises and good intentions. I wrote up a simple one-page contract stating that after I completed full renovations on the beach house, bringing it up to modern standards and significantly increasing its value, Rick and Linda would transfer 60% ownership of the property to me and Sarah jointly. Nothing complicated, just basic protection for the work I was about to put in. Had two of my buddies witness the signing, Tommy from my old job and Derek, who I went to high school with. Both solid guys who knew me well enough to know I wasn't trying to screw anyone over. The whole family acted like I was being completely paranoid and ridiculous. Jake especially was being a complete ass about it. Dude's acting like we're gonna screw him over or something, Jake said, loud enough for everyone to hear. It's just family helping family, bro. Why you gotta make it all legal and weird? Sarah kept apologizing for me like I was some kind of embarrassment. He's just being extra careful. You know how contractors are about protecting themselves. That comment stung more than I wanted to admit. The day we all signed was a Sunday after family dinner at Rick and Linda's house. The whole thing felt awkward and tense. Rick signed first, barely even reading it, just scribbling his name like he was signing a grocery receipt. Linda signed with this tight, fake smile like she was doing me the biggest favor in the world. Sarah signed last and gave me this look like, happy now, you paranoid freak? Jake wouldn't shut up the entire time. Man, when this place is all fixed up, I'm gonna throw some epic parties down there. Beach house parties are gonna be absolutely legendary. My friends are gonna flip when they see this place. He was already talking about the house like it belonged to him, which should have been a massive red flag, but I was focused on the signatures on that contract. I kept the original, gave them copies. Looking back, I think they all figured I'd slap some paint on the walls, maybe fix a few obvious problems, then lose interest when I realized how much work it really was. They had absolutely no idea what they were in for. I threw absolutely everything I had into that beach house project, every single weekend, often taking Friday afternoons off work, making the 4-hour drive down to Myrtle Beach. The work was brutal, South Carolina humidity that made you feel like you were breathing through a wet towel, sand that got into literally everything, and neighbors who seemed to think volume limits were just suggestions. But I had a vision for what that place could become, and I was determined to make it happen. First major project was the HVAC system, which was completely shot. The old unit looked like it hadn't been serviced since the Clinton administration. Refrigerant was leaking, ductwork was disconnected in half a dozen places, and the thermostat was held together with duct tape and prayers. Ripped it all out and started over. Installed a brand new high-efficiency system, ran completely new ductwork through the entire house, upgraded the electrical to handle the load. That project alone took me 8 weekends and cost almost $9,000 in parts and materials. Then came the electrical work. Half the outlets in the house didn't work, and the other half were legitimate fire hazards. Outlet covers that were cracked and falling off, wiring that looked like it was installed by someone who learned electrical work from YouTube videos. Found several junction boxes that were just hanging loose in the walls with live wires exposed. Rewired the entire house from top to bottom. New panel box, new circuits, new outlets, new switches, everything brought up to current code. Another 6 weekends and probably $4,000 in materials. The plumbing was even worse than the electrical. Whoever did the original work must have been drunk, high, or both, because nothing made any logical sense. Hot water lines running to cold water fixtures, pipes that went up through the ceiling just to come back down to the same floor, and a main line that had more patches than original pipe. Repeaked everything with PEX, installed new fixtures throughout, upgraded the water heater to a tankless system. The amount of crawling around under the house I had to do for that project probably took years off my life. But the real nightmare was the foundation work. Years of neglect had led to water damage everywhere. Rotting sill plates, floor joists that were more termite food than actual wood, and sections where you could literally see daylight through the foundation. Had to jack up entire sections of the house, dig out damaged concrete, pour new footings, and rebuild half the subfloor structure. That project alone ate up 12 weekends and probably 300 hours of the most backbreaking work I've ever done in my life. Meanwhile, while I'm killing myself every weekend trying to salvage this disaster, Sarah was already acting like the place belonged to her. She'd drive down with her girlfriends for girls' weekends, posting Instagram stories from the beach while I was crawling around under the house fixing pipes and dodging spiders. Linda started referring to it as Sarah's beach house when talking to her friends. Rick would brag to his buddies about how his son-in-law was fixing up the family place like he was doing me some kind of favor by letting me work for free. And Jake, this absolute waste of oxygen, started treating the place like his personal crash pad. Would show up with his loser friends, leave energy drink cans and fast food containers everywhere, track sand through the house I was trying to renovate. One time I showed up on a Saturday morning and found them using my tools to build some stupid fire pit in the yard without even asking. When I got pissed about it, Sarah just laughed it off. "Oh, come on, honey. They're just having fun. Jake loves that place so much. He's practically living there on weekends." I documented absolutely everything obsessively. Before and after photos of every single room, receipts for every screw and wire nut, hours logged in a detailed notebook with dates and descriptions of work completed. Call it paranoia? But something deep in my gut told me to keep track of everything. The kitchen renovation alone took 2 months. Ripped out the old cabinets that were literally falling apart, installed beautiful new ones, upgraded all the appliances, put in granite countertops, tiled the backsplash, turned a space that looked like a crack house into something you'd see in a home improvement magazine. Bathroom renovations were another nightmare. 3 full bathrooms that all needed to be gutted down to the studs. New tile work, new fixtures, new vanities, new lighting. I taught myself tile work through YouTube videos, and probably redid half of it twice before I got it right. The flooring throughout the house was shot. Old carpet that smelled like wet dog, and hardwood that was warped beyond repair. Pulled it all up and installed luxury vinyl plank that looked like real hardwood, but could handle the humidity and sand. Painted every single wall, ceiling, and piece of trim in that house. Pressure washed the entire exterior and repainted it. Built a brand new deck to replace the rotting death trap that was there before. Restored the old pier and built a new gazebo at the end of it. By the time I was finished, I'd put in over 1,000 hours of work across 2 years and spent approximately $38,000 of my own money on materials and supplies. Never asked Rick and Linda for a single penny back, never charged them a dime for labor. All I wanted was for them to honor the agreement we'd all signed. The finished product was absolutely stunning. The place looked like something from a luxury vacation rental website. Every room was magazine-worthy. The outdoor spaces were beautiful, and the whole property had this amazing beachy vibe that made you want to stay forever. Sarah was constantly posting pictures on social media, calling it our little slice of paradise and the house that love built. Her friends were commenting about how lucky she was to have such a handy husband. Linda was bragging to her church friends about the amazing transformation. I was exhausted, but incredibly proud of what I'd accomplished. 2 years of my life had gone into making that place perfect, and it showed in every detail. 3 weeks ago, the renovation was finally completely finished. Every last detail was done. Final touch-up paint, last pieces of trim installed, final cleanup completed. The transformation was honestly breathtaking. Sarah suggested we have a big family barbecue to celebrate and show off the finished project. Let's invite everyone over so they can see the incredible work you've done, babe. This is such a huge accomplishment. Looking back, I should have known something was wrong by how excited and nervous she seemed. But I was just proud of the work and looking forward to finally being able to enjoy the place we'd talked about for so long. Jake showed up about 2 hours before everyone else, which was weird because he usually rolled in right when the food was ready. He had this strange, smug expression on his face and kept grinning at me like he knew some hilarious secret. Normally, Jake would just raid the refrigerator and disappear to play video games or whatever, but he was hanging around, making small talk, acting almost nice, which should have been a massive red flag, because Jake had never been nice to me a single day in his life. Sarah kept disappearing into the kitchen to whisper with Linda, but I figured they were just coordinating food and party stuff. Rick seemed unusually excited and kept checking his phone like he was waiting for something. When everyone arrived, the reaction was everything I'd hoped for. My buddies Tommy and Derek were blown away by the transformation. Neighbors who'd seen the before and after were genuinely impressed. Even people who barely knew me were complimenting the incredible work. Everyone was walking around taking pictures, commenting on details, asking questions about how I'd done various projects. It felt amazing to finally get recognition for all the blood, sweat, and tears I'd poured into that place. The barbecue was going perfectly. Great food, good weather, everyone having a good time. I was finally starting to relax and think about how we'd enjoy our beautiful beach house for years to come. Then Rick stood up in the middle of the patio, holding a set of keys in one hand and this big manila envelope in the other. He had this huge grin on his face like he was about to announce something wonderful. Everyone! Linda and I have a big announcement to make. This beautiful house needs someone who can really appreciate it, someone who will be here to enjoy it properly and take care of it the way it deserves. I'm thinking, okay, here it comes. They're going to officially transfer ownership to Sarah and me. Maybe make some nice speech about family and hard work paying off. My heart was actually pounding with excitement and gratitude. After 2 years of work, this was the moment I'd been waiting for. Instead, Rick turns to Jake with this proud father expression and says, "Son, your mother and I have decided to give the beach house to you. You've always loved this place more than anyone, and we know you'll make the most of it." I literally started laughing out loud because I thought it had to be some kind of joke. Maybe they were building up to the real announcement, or this was some weird family humor I didn't understand. But then I looked around and realized nobody else was laughing. In fact, they were all starting to smile and nod, like this made perfect sense. Sarah raised her glass of iced tea and said, "Congratulations, Jake! You deserve this so much." And honestly, Chris never really liked the beach anyway. He's always complaining about the sand and the heat. The entire world just stopped moving. Everyone started clapping for Jake like he'd accomplished something amazing. Linda handed him the manila folder, and I could see it was title transfer paperwork, already filled out and ready to file. Sarah was beaming like this was the most wonderful surprise ever. Jake looked directly at me with this shit-eating grin and said, "Thanks for fixing up my beach house, bro. You really saved me a lot of work. I owe you one." Then he actually winked at me. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't process what was happening. 2 years of my life, over 1,000 hours of work, $38,000 of my own money, and they were just giving it away to Jake, like I didn't exist. Without saying a single word, I turned around, walked to my truck, and drove the 4 hours home in complete, shocked silence. When I got home that night, I sat in my driveway for probably an hour, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Part of me wondered if I'd misunderstood something, if maybe there was some explanation that would make it all make sense. But then I went to my filing cabinet and pulled out that contract. Their signatures, the date, Tommy and Derek's witness signatures. Everything was there in black and white, legal, binding, and completely ignored. I scanned the document and emailed it to David Chen, a lawyer who'd helped me with some business stuff before. Sent it that same night with a detailed explanation of everything that had happened. David called me first thing Monday morning. Chris, you need to get down here right now. We need to talk. David Chen has been handling legal issues for small business owners in Charlotte for about 20 years. He's this calm, methodical guy who doesn't get excited about anything. So when I walked into his office and saw the expression on his face, I knew this was serious. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, he said, holding up the contract. You have a signed agreement. You performed all the work specified. You have documentation of everything you did. And they just gave the property to someone else entirely? That's exactly what happened. He leaned back in his chair and smiled for the first time since I'd known him. Chris, they just handed you a winning lottery ticket. This is the most clear-cut breach of contract case I've seen in years. We spent 2 hours going through everything. I had the signed contract, over 200 before and after photos, receipts for every purchase, detailed work logs, even text messages between Sarah and me discussing the project. David said it was the most thoroughly documented case he'd ever seen. We're going to destroy them in court, he said. But first, let's see how they respond to a formal demand letter. 3 days after that meeting, Sarah showed up at a job site where I was installing a new HVAC system for a customer. I was up in a sweltering attic, sweating through my clothes, when I heard her outside yelling at my helper to get me down immediately. The moment I climbed down the ladder, she started screaming at me in front of my customer and everyone else on the job site. You cannot sue my parents. Are you completely insane? What is wrong with you? I'm not the one who broke a legal contract, Sarah. This is absolutely ridiculous. What's the point of this? They're my family. You're supposed to be family too. Yeah, well, family doesn't usually steal 2 years of someone's life and then laugh about it. She got even more defensive, started going off about how Jake needed this more than we did, because he was struggling to find his direction in life, and this would give him the stability and purpose he needs. Then she hit me with the line that ended our marriage. Besides, you didn't even want that house anyway. You hate the beach. You're always complaining about everything. Jake will actually appreciate it and use it properly. You promised it would be ours, Sarah. You looked me in the eye and promised. She stared at me for a long moment, then said the words that I'll never forget. I didn't think you'd be such a baby about it. God, it's just a house. Get over it. Just a house. 2 years of my life, over 1,000 hours of backbreaking work, $38,000 of my own money, and it was just a house that I should get over. That's when I knew this marriage was completely finished. But David's legal discovery process was just getting started, and what we found was absolutely nuclear. Through subpoenas and formal discovery requests, we gained access to text messages, emails, and social media communications between all the family members. What we uncovered was a conspiracy that had been in the works for over 8 months. The evidence was devastating. Text message chains between Sarah and Linda discussing how they needed to string Chris along until all the work is finished. Jake had texted Sarah saying, "Your husband is basically my free contractor, lol, this is awesome." Sarah's response, "I know, right? He's so focused on the work he has no idea what's coming." Linda had texted Rick, "Once Chris finishes everything and the house is worth something, we give it to Jake and Sarah can divorce him. She'll probably get half his business in the settlement anyway." Sarah's response to that message, "Already talked to a divorce lawyer. This is going to work out perfectly." But the absolute worst one was Jake texting his friends, "My sister's dumbass husband is fixing up my new beach house for free. Guy thinks he's going to own part of it, LMAO. Can't wait to throw parties there while he's paying alimony." When David showed me printouts of these messages, I actually felt physically ill. They'd been planning to screw me over for most of the time I was working on that house. Every weekend I'd spent down there, they were laughing about how stupid and gullible I was. Sarah had been actively participating in planning my betrayal while kissing me goodbye every Friday morning and telling me how proud she was of my hard work. Armed with this evidence, David filed the most comprehensive lawsuit I'd ever seen. Breach of contract, unjust enrichment, fraud, conspiracy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. He was going for everything they had, and then some. Rick and Linda's initial response was absolutely pathetic. Through their lawyer, they claimed they didn't fully understand what they were signing, and that the contract was just a family arrangement, not a real legal agreement. They offered me $15,000 for my time and trouble. David's response was swift and brutal. He rejected their offer and filed a motion for summary judgment, including all the text message evidence showing they'd planned the whole thing in advance. That's when the family really started showing their true colors. Jake began posting on social media calling me a greedy piece of garbage who was destroying a family over money. He shared the story on Facebook, painting himself as the victim and me as some kind of monster, trying to steal his family's property. Sarah's friends started commenting about how I was showing my true colors and how Sarah deserved so much better than a man who would sue his own family. Some of them started leaving negative reviews on my business pages, trying to damage my reputation. Sarah herself started telling people I was obsessed and dangerous, claiming she was afraid of me and that I'd always had anger issues. She even filed for a restraining order, though it was thrown out when she couldn't provide any evidence of actual threats or dangerous behavior. But David was just getting warmed up. He filed additional motions requesting punitive damages, citing the premeditated nature of their fraud and the extensive evidence of their conspiracy. He also discovered something that changed everything. During the discovery process, David found out that Rick had secretly taken out a $45,000 home equity loan against the beach house 6 months earlier, using the increased property value from my renovations as collateral for the loan. He'd used that money to buy a boat and pay off gambling debts, never telling Linda, Sarah, or anyone else about it. The house they'd just given to Jake was actually leveraged to the hilt, and Rick had been planning to disappear the debt along with the property. This discovery led David to file additional charges of fraudulent conveyance and concealment of assets. The judge was not amused. When we finally got to court, it was a massacre. David presented our evidence methodically and thoroughly. The signed contract, witnessed and dated, over 200 photographs documenting the transformation, receipts totaling $38,000 in materials, work logs showing over 1,000 hours of labor. Then came the text messages. Watching Rick, Linda, and Sarah's faces as David read their own words back to them in open court was one of the most satisfying moments of my entire life. The judge's expression grew more disgusted with each message. Jake wasn't even there. Turns out he'd been arrested for drug possession the week before the hearing and was sitting in county jail. Rick tried to claim he'd been confused about the contract, but David had text messages of him bragging to friends about getting his son-in-law to fix up the beach house for free months before the work was even finished. Linda tried to play the victim, crying about how I was tearing the family apart, but David had her own messages talking about how Chris is too stupid to realize what's happening. Sarah's testimony was the most pathetic of all. She actually tried to claim that I'd pressured her into signing the contract and that she'd felt intimidated by my insistence on getting everything in writing. David calmly presented text messages of her bragging to friends about manipulating Chris into doing all this work for free, and discussing her divorce plans while I was still working on the house. The judge didn't even need to recess to make his decision, granted summary judgment in our favor, and awarded me the full current market value of the house, $320,000 plus $75,000 in punitive damages, plus all attorney fees and court costs. But the best part was still coming. The judge ordered the immediate sale of the property to satisfy the judgment. Within 2 weeks, the house I'd spent 2 years renovating was on the market. It sold in 4 days for $325,000 after a bidding war between 3 different buyers. After Rick's secret $45,000 loan was paid off, plus court costs, attorney fees, and other expenses, I walked away with $285,000 in cash. Rick and Linda got nothing, less than nothing actually, because they still owed money on legal fees. Jake got exactly what he deserved, absolutely zero. You'd think that would be the end of the story, but oh no. The best part was still coming. About 4 months after the judgment, my phone started ringing. First, it was Linda, crying hysterically about how they were about to lose their main house because they couldn't make the mortgage payments without the rental income they'd been counting on from the beach house. "Chris, please, I'm begging you," she sobbed into the phone. "We made a terrible mistake. Can't you find it in your heart to help family? We're going to be homeless. Can you loan us some money just until we get back on our feet?" I listened to her cry for about 30 seconds, then hung up. A week later, Rick called. Suddenly, he was acting like we'd always been best buddies, talking about misunderstandings and family forgiveness. Said he'd learned his lesson and realized how wrong they'd all been. "Look, son, we screwed up big time. I admit it, but we're family, and family sticks together through tough times. Maybe you could help us work something out? We could pay you back once we get the house refinanced." "Sorry, Rick," I said. "It's just money. I didn't think you'd be such a baby about it." Then I hung up on him too. But Jake's call was the absolute best. He'd gotten out of jail and discovered that his beach house had been sold, and he was getting nothing. Apparently, reality had hit him pretty hard because he actually showed up at my shop one day, hat in hand, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Hey, Chris, man, I wanted to apologize for everything. I know we really screwed up, and I feel terrible about it. I was wondering if maybe you needed any help around here. I'm willing to work for free to try to make things right." I looked at this pathetic loser who'd spent 2 years mocking me behind my back, and I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Jake, I said, I wouldn't hire you to clean toilets. Get out of my shop. But the absolute crown jewel was Sarah's call. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, after she'd lost her job, her friends, and most of her possessions, she called me late one night, crying harder than I'd ever heard anyone cry. Chris, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I know that now. I was stupid and greedy, and I listened to my family instead of trusting you. But I still love you. I know we can work this out if you'll just give me another chance. She went on for 10 minutes about how sorry she was, how she'd learned her lesson, how she'd do anything to fix what she'd broken. Then she got to the real reason for the call. I'm living in this tiny apartment and I can barely afford food. I lost my job because word got around about the lawsuit, and my boss said I was a liability. Could you maybe help me with some money for a security deposit on a better place? Just until I get back on my feet? I listened to her sob story in complete silence. When she finally finished, I said, Sarah, you were right about one thing. It really is just money, and I didn't think you'd be such a baby about not having any. Then I hung up and blocked her number. I took that $285,000 and bought a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood outside Charlotte. Got myself a brand new truck, upgraded all my business equipment, and even took a real vacation to Colorado, my first time off in years. Meanwhile, Rick and Linda lost their house to foreclosure within 8 months. Last I heard, they're renting a 2-bedroom apartment, and Rick is working part-time at a hardware store. Jake's been in and out of jail twice since then, and is currently living in his car, according to mutual acquaintances. And Sarah? She's working at a gas station, living in a studio apartment that's smaller than most people's closets, still trying to find some other sucker to pay her bills. The absolute best part of all this is that they destroyed themselves. I didn't have to do anything except enforce a legal contract and let the justice system work exactly as it's supposed to. They thought I was just some dumb contractor they could use and throw away. Turns out I was the guy who kept detailed records, honored legal agreements, and played for keeps when people tried to screw me over. Sometimes the good guys really do win, and sometimes their revenge is so perfectly, completely satisfying that it restores your faith in justice.